Hey, it's Jessica with Food Foundation, the company I started to help you use food as healing. And today I'm going to talk about how to cleanse safely. And I will use a project that I made called the 28-Day Detox of an example of just a way to help cleanse your body eating nutrient-dense foods. And I created this because I wanted to capture people who at the beginning of the year, or maybe in the beginning of spring, maybe in September when we're used to that sort of school starting, we're thinking of doing a juice cleanse or something really serious when their body might be just coming out of the holidays and maybe filled with a lot of extra toxins because you had a really joyous holiday. And that can be a really dangerous time because, as we'll learn, detoxification is a very nutrient-dependent process in the body. So, what do we have in our body that comes up as toxicity problems that makes us think we want to cleanse or think we want to detox? We typically have a lot of inflammation. We can see that as the redness, the swelling, the heat, the pain in different areas of the body. We could have muscle pain, joint pain, headaches. It's all in the realm of inflammation. Maybe we have head inflammation, so we have brain fog and poor memory. Maybe we can't focus, so we have those symptoms of attention deficit that are not diagnosed. We might have just an easy time being distracted. Or maybe the inflammation is coming from the gut and it's sending hormones to the body that make us feel irritable, make us angry, feeling anxiety, depression, and just a general malaise or fatigue. We might experience weight gain. That's a huge reason that I think people tend to want to cleanse or detoxify the body in the beginning of the year. We might feel food sensitivities, like we've been sneezing, throat clearing, having watery eyes and itchy. And sometimes we just think that's allergies, but typically it's because there's toxicity in the body. Finally, if the liver is not detoxifying adequately, we can see those toxic symptoms come through the skin as they try to come through the body, and we might have rashes, hives, eczema, and other skin disorders. So this is a picture of my daughter, and it just reminded me of I had many of these toxicity problems, but I never really saw the need to detox until I saw them in my own child. And I was feeding like rice, cereal, and garbage from the store, none of it organic, just filling her body full of toxic goldfish and just a bunch of garbage. And it wasn't until I saw her struggling and dealing with rashy skin and some of these attention deficit disorders, and I really wanted to make a difference. And so that's when I started really detoxing our house and using really safe cleansers. I make her own laundry detergent because she can't even use the safest, cleanest one in the store. I have to make it. She uses really food grade products that you could put in your mouth. So like olive oil on the skin or almond oil, something we wouldn't be afraid to eat because your skin absorbs toxins just like you putting them in your mouth. So we started cutting out all of the food colorings. She would just tell her classmates that she was allergic to food dye red, which I loved that. She did that on her own, but because she'd feel terrible after eating like a popsicle at school with red food dye. And by clearing out all of these different pathways, her skin and her focus and everything improved and completely surpassed mine. I mean, she's so intelligent and so responsible about her body that I thought, wow, I need to share this information with others. So this is it looks really scary. White people, I think, hate reading white papers. But let me just make it as simple as possible for you so that you really understand this is your liver. And your liver does most of your detoxing. We also detox in other places, but this is the primary area where toxins come into the body, or they are endogenous, they're already in our bodies, but things like hormones, once we use them, they're a waste product or a toxin. Neurotransmitters like dopamine, once we use that, it becomes a waste product that we need to filter out. So imagine if we're also taking extra ones, taking extra hormones and extra toxins, besides the toxins that we're putting on our skin or breathing in the air. They come in as mostly these fat soluble compounds, and they need to leave the body at the other end as a water soluble, maybe sweat, urine, feces. And I'm sure if you've made salad dressing, you know, olive oil and water don't mix. So these fat soluble compounds need to be completely converted chemically to a water soluble compound so they can leave the body. So they go through phase 1 detoxification. This is something that we are often revving up when we think about doing a cleanse, and we're getting all of this really good material for the body, but it takes a lot of vitamins. So the most important thing for you to remember when you're coming back to the slide is the nutrients used. There's all the B vitamins, especially B12, which we can be very low in a lot of times, and flavonoids and these compounds that are in the plants, especially the brightly colored plants, that are really important to get from phase 1 to phase 2. So if you notice at phase 1 at the bottom, there's this lightning bolt of free radicals. When you convert these compounds into a free radical as they go from phase 1 to phase 2, those are really dangerous chemicals in the body that can cause cancer. Now that happens to every one of us all of the time, and it's what has to happen to get to phase 2. So what we can do to sort of protect ourselves from these free radicals are these dangerous compounds, these intermediary compounds, which is just what happens in your body, is we can eat a lot of antioxidants. I'm sure you've heard that word. It's in the brightly colored or the deeply hued foods. So you hear blueberries, yes, deep blue antioxidants. Dark grapes, we hear of resveratrol, yes, dark purple. And all of the foods have these antioxidants that help bind to the free radicals and protect them from your body. I like to think of them like nannies. Like the free radicals are all these crazy children running around, and the nannies bind them until they can get them to phase 2, or maybe to sleep, before they can go on. So as we're moving into phase 2, this is where the problem usually happens with people, and why I often don't recommend cutting out meats, and maybe you don't eat meat, that's fine, but don't cut out your proteins, because it's really important for phase 2 detoxification. If we look at the nutrients used on the phase 2 side, in order for the toxins to become waste product that can leave the body, we need all of these amino acids, glycine, taurine, glutamine, cysteine, methionine. We need these amino acids, which are the little building blocks of proteins, to convert these compounds. So what happens is people often rev up phase 1, they eat a lot of antioxidants, and then they don't eat enough of the amino acids or the protein to actually get out of phase 2. So when you're looking back at this slide, it might just help you to look at all of the nutrients that you need for both phases, and remember that it's really important to have all of them to get to that end pathway. And we want to make sure when we get the end, we're having a bowel movement every day, at least one, and that we're having a natural urination, something that we don't have to rev up or slow down, and that we are sweating, which can really help with some of the other toxins. Okay, so these are the 4 things that I think are important when you're doing your cleanse or your detox. It does not matter which one you're doing. Number 1, we need to eat what your body tolerates. So this is how my body tolerates a hamburger. I get grass-fed, pastured beef from a local rancher where I know where the beef was raised. I know that their animals are not shot full of hormones, and I know that they're not given antibiotics, and I can't eat wheat because I makes my face break out in rosacea, so I would eat the hamburger without a bun. That might not be how you eat a hamburger. Maybe you don't eat meat. And so yours would look like a salad and maybe a bun, and hopefully that bun would not be processed white flour, but a homemade whole wheat bun. Maybe you can't eat onions raw because they upset your stomach, or maybe you can't eat tomatoes because they're a nightshade and they trigger inflammation in your body. So everybody's burger, just as an example, looks completely different. And no matter what the detox or what the cleanse, we need to be able to shift things around so that we're eating what our body tolerates without having any of those symptoms that I mentioned on the first page. So you're not having inflammation, sneezing, any sort of symptom that might show that you have a sensitivity to that food. We need to eat enough macronutrients, which are our carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, because like I showed, those are what help get through all the phases of detoxification, and our micronutrients, which are the little vitamins and antioxidants and polyphenols and minerals that are in food that are so important. And if you have a specific diet, maybe you're on a carnivore diet, you might not be getting enough vitamin C if you're not eating organ meats. Maybe you're on a vegetarian diet and you're not getting enough protein. Maybe you're on a vegan diet and you're not getting enough vitamin B12, carnitine. Maybe you're on a ketogenic diet and you're not getting enough plant material or fiber. It's really important to supplement to make sure that you're getting enough for the liver to detoxify if that is your end goal. 3, no matter what cleanse, diet, detox you're doing, you need to avoid processed foods like fake meats, artificial ingredients. So I was saying the food colorings. If you're doing a vegan January, veganuary, great, but don't eat fake, overly processed meats that are full of ingredients that are really causing immune systems to be triggered. And that is one of the biggest offenders of today's health crisis. So we want to make sure that we're really avoiding these processing agents that are used that are not real foods, and our body doesn't know what to do with them. So they store them in a fat cell in the liver and becomes fatty liver. And 4, enjoy a wide variety, like exactly the way foods come in nature as or fermented as they naturally progress or rot. But we want to find local foods, seasonal foods, beautiful foods, and as many different varieties as possible, because every single color and every single variety of plant foods offers a different nutrient, and that will feed different bacteria in your gut to grow a beautiful, healthy bacterial garden, which the bacteria is what helps you digest your food. So it will help you build resilience and tolerate more foods, and you'll have to detox less. So let's talk about proteins and what we need to make sure about proteins when you're eating them. And whether or not you're eating animal proteins, fish proteins, or plant-based proteins, we need to make sure that we're eating them as natural as they come. So nuts, raw nuts. Soy is one of those really hard ones, and you see, is soy allowed? Is soy not allowed? And when I make soy, I make a tempeh, which is not easy. It's one of those processes where you need to soak the beans, and then you need to add a mold, and they start to break it down. That's what you have to do to some of the plant foods to unlock the protein that's in the amino acid form. Otherwise, it's like eating an entire Lego formation when all you needed was that blue Lego in there, but it's all stuck together and you can't get to it. You can't quite get to the proteins of some of these beans and nuts and legumes. So we need to make sure that we're getting a wide variety and as natural as possible, and as soaked. Maybe with the nuts and the beans, we want to soak them so that they can start to unlock their protein. With our animal proteins, we want to make sure that we're really conscious about eating pasture-raised animals that are out on a farm. I would never want you to go and get meat from a centralized operating feeding situation where the animals are locked in cages, or maybe they're free range, but they're not in a cage, but they're in a garage, essentially on a concrete floor in there. Or maybe they're enhanced outdoor access. So there's one little grassy 3-foot by 3-foot area that none of them can even get to without fighting for it. So it's really important that the animals are out on pasture, that they're not eating grains and things that are not their natural diet, but they're eating their natural diet. They're healthy. They have a lot of vitamins in their system. They don't need to be pumped full of antibiotics because they're not getting sick in those cramped quarters next to a bunch of sick animals eating the wrong type of foods, that they're not pumped full of hormones so that they make their size really quickly and we can get them out to sell, and that they're not eating things like corn that just make them fat so that we have that nice taste, but then they are really unhealthy, and that's like eating an obese cow. We want to make sure that we're not eating with our plant-based proteins isolated powders. So a lot of times when they isolate soy, it's often grown in the US on a GMO crop. It's often sprayed with glyphosate or any type of chemicals and pesticides which bind to the protein, and then you can't really digest it, or it is really harmful to your digestive system. And whether or not it's causing cancer, there's research both ways, but it does cause digestive stress and inflammation, so it's not really good. We also want to make sure with our seafood that even though the ocean is becoming toxic and we're really throwing plastics and upsetting the waters by using so many pesticides which are running off into the ocean, they're still finding that we need these beautiful omega-3 fatty acids that are in seafood and the minerals of the ocean water, and it's still healthier for your body to eat 2 to 3 times a week, but you want to make sure that it's wild, that if it's coming from a farm, that it's a sustainable farm. There are very few of them. Most of them are farmed and saying, hey, look, we're not in the toxic ocean, but they're feeding them garbage. I won't even go into it, it's disgusting, but we want to make sure that we're eating really healthy seafood so that we're getting the healthy materials and not the toxins that burden our liver going through phase 1 and phase 2 with what we're already eating in the first place. With our fats, so it's funny, when I very first started the detox, I had a lot of critique from registered dietitians, and I thought, that's where I started. I started in that type of school and left because it was contrary to all my beliefs of eating natural foods to eat something like a snack Wells pack because you knew exactly how many calories were in it. And everybody was avoiding fat. And when they first did my detox, it was like, oh my gosh, you're just using too much fat. And it's not even as much fat as a ketogenic diet. I've really tried to balance in reviewing all of the research of what would be the healthiest. And I don't specify exactly how much because I think what is the healthiest is different for each person. But now the ketogenic diet, which is even more fat, is actually medically applied by a lot of doctors that I work with. So it's interesting that we've come full circle and we realized we should have just been eating the fat in the first place. So what I want you to think of is eat the fats that naturally come in the foods. So these are some of the recipes in my detox where we have a turmeric milk that you could be made with a whole fat milk or with a coconut milk, something rich. Definitely not with something like an oat milk that's just pure sugar. We want to eat the avocados and the eggs. With the eggs, the egg yolk. I can't believe how many times we spread that misinformation that you should be eating the egg white without the yolk, where the egg white is a protein that's really difficult to digest. But the fat of the yolk is where the fat-soluble vitamins are that we need so desperately for our immune system and for our health and for the shiny skin and for proper bowel movements and for making hormones. We need the fats for so many things. And in order to absorb our proteins, they need to have fat. So these foods that come naturally, you can see the fat marbled through these meats and these really high quality meats in the dried charcuterie plate. The fat is really important to absorb the protein. So your darker meats are going to have a little bit more nutrition in that and a little bit more natural fats. The olives, right, are in the charcuterie plate that make beautiful olive oil. So important. And the walnuts and these seeds and the seed crackers, nuts and seeds in their raw form are so beautiful in their fat content. And it's really important because we think if we eat more fat, we're going to get fat, and that's not what happens at all, which is why they're medically applying the ketogenic fat diet to obese people. It's because they start losing weight right away when their body gets the fat nutrition and those fat-soluble vitamins that their body needed. What they're suffering from usually is more of an insulin resistance from eating too many carbs and their body raising insulin from having high blood sugar all the time. Excuse me. So it's really important to make sure you're eating enough fat, that you're slowing down your digestive process and not binging on tons of carbs and having really high insulin all the time, because that is what can lead to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, which are really terrible comorbidities that can make your immune system troubled and be really serious when there's infections out in the open. When you're eating fats, however, you want to eat the whole fat as it came in nature, so you don't want to eat like a skim or any product where they've skimmed off the fat. You don't want to worry about cutting all the fat off. It's funny to watch my son eat a pork chop. I don't cut the fat off when I'm cooking it, so it keeps it nice and tasty, and then he eats right through the entire plate. He's the skinniest one of all of us. But the fat, I buy these pork chops again from that meat rancher, the Market Guard family that I know how they raise their pigs, and they're out on the field and they're living a beautiful life. So they're not full of the hormones and the pesticides that I was talking about, and those chemicals reside in the fat cells. So the more fat we are, the more toxins we have stored in our fat cells. And the same thing with an animal. So we want to be really careful not to eat that marbled meat that's full of toxins, because then our body will put those toxins into a fat cell, and then you will get fat from eating fat. Finally, carbs. I love carbs. I think everybody loves carbs, but they're not loving the right carbs. And I think what happened is carbs got a bad reputation, and it's not about a high carb or a low carb diet. It's about the right carbs. So if you want to eat vegan all of January and you eat plants and fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans, great. But don't eat things like processed white flour, right, where you're eating these cheap breads, or oat milk where it's been highly processed. We need to make sure we're getting back to the real carb, that beautiful vegetable, fruit, whole grain, beans, and look out for that processing. What I was saying about oat milk, unfortunately, the processing takes this beautiful oat grain. I love oats when they're a steel cut oat, and processes them like any grain. They become maltose, which is a sugar. And when it's pure maltose, like that liquid oat milk, it's actually a higher glycemic index than white table sugar. So you're just drinking a ton of sugar, which of course is going to raise your blood glucose, raise your insulin, and if you do that day after day, that can lead to insulin resistance and be very dangerous for the liver. So we want to make sure that we're eating these beautiful carbs that have a lot of fiber, so that we're not just drinking the apple juice every day or the orange juice, but eating the oranges and eating the apples, eating the greens, and trying to eat every single color. And that's what will help lower your cholesterol, lower your triglycerides, lower your chances of diabetes and heart disease, and make your doctor happy. So here's the 5 things you can do now, whether you're going to do my detox or not. You can follow these 5 steps, and this will help you have a natural, sustainable detoxification, because the body tries to detox every day. It's a natural process. We're the ones gumming up our process with alcohol and medications and drugs and toxins coming from the air and all sorts of junk we put on our skin. But we can do any of these 5 things and they will help. They will all help get you a little bit better. We'll talk about them in detail. But number 1, clean air, clean water, clean food, clean skin. You got it. Just clean up everything. Number 2, eat more variety and color to build more resilience. Number 3, slow down, show gratitude and be mindful. Number 4, sleep more, rest more. And when you're not resting or sleeping, enjoy your exercise. That's a lot different than just exercising. And number 5, feed your soul, feed your family, and feed your microbiome. So number 1, if you don't have this beautiful field, these are the pastured cattle I was talking about, and you don't have that beautiful clean air, and you're indoor all day, maybe all year, you might want to think about a HEPA air filter to make sure that you're not breathing in all sorts of toxins, especially if you're in a new office or you have a bunch of new furniture or you're constantly changing all of the appliances and things. They have a lot of toxins that they emit. We want to make sure that clean water, when we're drinking clean water, so you might want to think about a water filter. Even though where I am, we have beautiful water coming from the Hetch Hetchy, they still use chlorine and often fluoride, and all of these things end up as toxins in your body. Sometimes lead or arsenic, they find all sorts of different things in the water. Clean veggies. So it used to be you just had to buy natural veggies, then organic, and now sometimes even the organic is using organicides. So you really want to make sure that your produce is not sprayed. Maybe that's growing a few things in your own garden. Maybe that's a farmer at the farmer's market that you trust, that maybe they don't have their certification yet because it can be very time consuming. It takes 3 years for them to get the process, and but maybe they don't spray, right? Just make sure that your produce is as clean as you can find it. Make sure that you're not putting toxic chemicals on your body. We use all sorts of potions and lotions, and you want to make sure that everything's edible, that you wouldn't mind putting it in your mouth and actually eating it, because it is just as toxic to rub something on your skin as it is to put it in your mouth. And then cleaning solutions. Sometimes we're just using, especially this year, like hand sanitizers and bleach and all of these things that are really harmful for your bacteria, and they can just make a desert of your bacteria that are supposed to be this beautiful garden. So we want to be really careful that we're using things like vinegar and baking soda and natural products that we would put in our mouth. Variety. We can all do this. We can add more color, more diversity, more fun. Each color offers a different nutrient, so that the deep purples and the deep blues have anthocyanidins, which are really good for mood and boosting your mood. They have greens, the dark chlorophyll colors, really good for circulation with your lungs and your heart, which would be an excellent time this year to really boost circulation and lung health and heart health. The oranges and the beta carotene that comes are really good to support your eyes, and the reds have lycopene, which is really good as an anti-cancer antioxidant. So it's really important to get all of the colors and just keep trying something new. We need to slow down. I have a video, another video that has the same picture you can find about breathing mindfully. It's just a really quick couple minutes you can do at your desk if you can't get up, but I really want to encourage you to slow down. A lot of our indigestion and our acid reflux and our anxiety is because we're so strung out and we're so tense. We have a lot of stress, but we're stuck at our computer, at our indoor work office all day. Some of us are still in the office, maybe at a doctor's office. I work in a clinic, and although I don't have to go into the clinic, many of our medical assistants do, and they're right there in the faces of people every day, and it's very traumatizing. We just need to take time to breathe, be grateful, find some gratitude for something that's in your life, and be mindful. So sometimes we're just eating so fast to get back to what we're doing, or maybe we're still on the computer, or maybe we're at the TV, or maybe we're in between clients, but not even taking a moment to sit down. And that can cause a lot of indigestion and a lot of toxicity as things build up and don't get broken down completely. So if you take time and you be mindful, one of the practices I've been doing lately is I am detoxing, so I'm only allowed one piece of fruit, and it's a persimmon. I love persimmons. But sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. I want something more sweet. So now I take it outside, and we've been blessed with really beautiful weather the last few days. So I sit outside and I take a bite, and then I just chew and enjoy every delicious bite and sit in the sunshine and try to be really grateful of the sunshine, this amazing piece of fruit that I picked off a tree in our neighborhood, and be mindful in each bite. So it's so important because we see in studies that what causes a heart attack is not eating a bunch of fat. It's the stress that's on our bodies, and they're often triggered from stress. So we really need to bring the blood pressure down, to relax. There's another study that's really important that shows that kids that had a latex allergy that would break out in hives, they gave them latex, like a little rub with latex, they broke out in hives. Then they did it again after probably some Benadryl or something to relax, a different day. So the Benadryl wasn't still in their system, but they played Mozart, and the kids were super relaxed. And then they rubbed them with the latex, and most of them did not have hives or had barely any reaction. So we can really make a difference by just breathing and slowing down and enjoying the moment on our food sensitivities, on our mood, on our blood pressure, and our overall cardiovascular health. So along those lines, we need a little R&R, a little rest, relaxation. We also need to enjoy our exercise. So man, if you love HIIT, like a high intensity interval training, great, do it. I don't. So I love a relaxing yoga class. Both are going to get us to the same goals. We're both going to lose weight and be fit from my super gentle yoga class and maybe your HIIT class. Whatever you like. If you like to go for a run, great. I like to just walk casually by the beach. Both are going to get you to the goal. So as long as you're enjoying what you do, the movement is what's important, because the movement pulls the glucose from all of the sugars that you eat into the muscle and uses it instead of just raising your insulin and leading to that insulin resistance. When you're not exercising or moving, sleep is so important. This is my holistic sleep tip video. Really, I encourage you to go through it if you're having trouble sleeping, because I know there's nothing worse than somebody telling you how to sleep when you can't sleep. But I actually give a protocol to help you get there. And it's so important for detoxification, because detoxification occurs while you are sleeping. When you're done moving around, when you're done digesting your food, and when you're done doing all of those things that take priority in the body, then your body can work on moving things from phase 1 to the intermediary stage to phase 2 and making waste outside the body. And you know that happens if you have to wake up and go to the bathroom. And hopefully you don't have to go all night, because that's a misbelief that as we just get older, our bladders are weaker and we have to go to the bathroom all night. That's not true. I had to go a lot more when I was younger and drinking all the time than now when I'm older and I've cleansed my body. And when I wake up to go to the bathroom, it's very rare. And it's not that I never had that, so I do know what it's like. But it's really important that I try to get outside to breathe and cleanse the body through the lungs. Try to work up a little bit of a sweat, because that helps release some other toxins. And try to move to get that insulin into the cells and into the muscles so that I can use it. So for feed your soul, feed your community, feed your microbiome. Your microbiome is all over your body. And when we talk about it, usually meaning in the intestines, because that is where your immune system lies, but it's really, there's an oral microbiome and a vaginal microbiome and a skin microbiome. It's all over your entire body. Remember, there are 10,000, like 10 to 1, 10 times as much bacteria as your one human cell. So we're mostly bacteria. But this is unfortunately what our gut and our mouth and our vagina and our skin and our whole body looks like after antibiotics, after really high stress, after a very high sugar, high alcohol, high bad fat diet. And this is what it looks like when all of the good bacteria have been mowed down, killed down by antibiotics. And we've only been giving them the sugar and the bad fats and the bad foods that the weeds can use. And they actually love it. Like Candida, ooh, they love sugar. So they keep growing, and they start making you crave more sugar. And then you just keep eating sugar and feeding off all of these really bad bacteria. What we need to do is think about feeding our good bacteria in our body all over foods that help it grow, because it is our family and our community. And when we feed them the proper foods, the wide variety of whole plant foods, the whole vegetables, the whole fruit, the whole beans, the whole grains, this is what we get. It's really important to try not to use antibiotics, that hopefully you have a doctor that has a wait and see approach to see if you can improve without them. And I have helped many of our patients get through something like a viral infection where antibiotics have no effect anyway, with a wait and see approach, and they never needed to take it. And this is what their bacteria looks like. Plentiful. And when you have all of these different varieties growing, because they each eat different things, maybe the whites eat broccoli and maybe the reds eat tomatoes and maybe the yellows eat rice, right? Every different nutrient grows a different plant. When you have this many, there's no room for the weeds. And if you're not feeding them the toxic sugar that only the weeds can eat, you're feeding them things like garlic and onions and rosemary, ginger. Those things are so pungent that the bad bacteria can't use them. So they're like a natural antibiotic that your good bacteria can use and can grow and can help maintain a healthy bacteria, a healthy community, and a healthy ecosystem. This makes you really resilient to the toxins. So once you have this beautiful bacteria, you can become really resilient to that one treat that you have, because your body's, like I said, there's no room for the weeds to grow. So you can have that little bit of sugar or that little bit of, that little cocktail at the end of the week, and it wouldn't harm your system. So this is a little link just in case you're interested. My 28-day detox is now up in a really cool format where you get the information the whole year. So you can decide to do it whenever you want. It used to be that I'd start a day in January, and if you missed it, you missed it. We all did it together. But I am here for you in case you have any questions. There's a private discussion, and you'll have my email, and I'm there to support you, because when I did my first detox, I failed. I failed the first day, because as soon as I told myself I couldn't eat something, I wanted to eat that food. And we focus a little bit more on what you can eat and what you, how you can boost your immune system and boost that resilience. But I will be there for you in case you have any questions, because I found that I didn't have any support. So I felt like, how am I supposed to do this? I don't know what to do. I have a sore throat, and I need to have honey, because that's what I always have, but you're trying to avoid honey as a sweetener. And I didn't have somebody there to say, try licorice root tea. It's really sweet and really healing on that sore throat. So I really encourage you to check it out. This is the list that you get. And I worked really hard on this list. I first did it, I think, in 2014, and I've been running the detox. I used to run it every season, every year, and now it's up for you to do whenever you like, and all the recipes are there from all the seasons. And it's not a list of it's not a really difficult list. It's not a really strict elimination diet because I want you to feel that it's a sustainable way of eating. So you're not going Whole30 and then all of a sudden you can't wait till day 31 and you're like, I'm never going to do that again. That was just way too much, right? You're allowed to eat the grains, but we eat them in moderation, and I give you the moderation. We're allowed to eat the dairy, but it's a really strict moderation, and which ones, so that you're eating the cleanest ones. And it's just an education on how to navigate the world of nutrition when it's just rapidly changing and foods are using really crazy labels that don't make sense. And I'm just there to help you choose what would be the healthy choice for your body and what's going to make you feel amazing. So I hope you check it out. I'll leave a link below and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.